Mark Zuckerberg's ruthless rise. How long will it last? Facebook has defined an era of the internet. It pioneered the addictive algorithms that keep people hooked to their phones, excited when they see a notification, and gives them the constant dopamine hit after each scroll. And now, Mark Zuckerberg thinks he has identified the next big thing, the metaverse. He went as far as changing the company's name to Meta and spending $10 billion to achieve whatever this is. But no one is buying into his vision. Zuckerberg is the last person anyone trusts with their data, and when you look at his history, it becomes clear why. The metaverse will be capable of collecting more data than today, and Facebook has thrived on selling this data in a questionable way. From the Cambridge Analytica scandal, involving the data leak of 87 million Americans to whistleblowers like Frances Haugen, exposing the shady tactics Facebook uses, Facebook has done it all. Zuckerberg also has a history of lying, not caring about users' privacy, and being a ruthless businessman. Even engineers don't want to work at Meta anymore, despite offering the highest salary in Silicon Valley. Before all the layoffs, Meta struggled to get even 50% of the engineers to accept their offer. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. It gets so much worse. In this video, we'll discuss how Mark Zuckerberg became the most hated billionaire. Mark Zuckerberg has the typical Silicon Valley founder story. Born in a well-off family of a dentist and a philanthropist, he was interested in programming early on. During his years at Harvard, he built a reputation for being a programming prodigy, and this is where we would see Zuckerberg's early lack of privacy concern. He made a website called FaceMash that let students select the best-looking person from a choice of photos. The site went up over a weekend, but the college shut it down by Monday morning because its popularity had overwhelmed one of Harvard's network switches. Many students complained that their photos were being used without permission. But this was just the start, and Zuckerberg was about to show his ruthless self very soon. In college, he had a reputation for being a geeky programmer who didn't care much about business. He even uploaded an app that lets people find new music according to their taste for free when Microsoft was interested in it. This is when he would meet the Winklevoss twins, who pitched him the idea for Connect You, an app very similar to what Facebook would later become. The idea was to create an exclusive social media app for Harvard students and create an exclusive environment. Zuckerberg initially agreed to help, but the twins were unprepared for what would come next. After agreeing, Zuckerberg would constantly postpone meetings, ignore texts and calls, pretending to be busy with schoolwork. But Zuckerberg was building a similar app behind their back. After months of going back and forth, Facebook was finally live in January 2004. This case would continue until 2008, when Facebook finally settled for $20 million and $1.2 million of stock, totaling $45 million. And Mark Zuckerberg was just getting started. When he worked on Facebook in the early days, he needed some funding and approached his roommate Eduardo Saverin for it. Mark's idea was that Eduardo could take care of the business while he focused on coding. He came from a wealthy Brazilian family and gave the impression that he was connected to the Brazilian mafia. But when Mark hired Napster's founder Sean Parker to do what Eduardo did, he realized Eduardo was replaceable. So, he made a plan to dilute Eduardo's holding on Facebook. This allowed Mark to become the sole director of Facebook and control everything. Even today, Zuckerberg has the majority voting powers at Meta. This case would also go on for years, and Facebook would finally settle for Eduardo in 2010 for an undisclosed amount. Both the Winklevoss twins and Sean are multi-billionaires now, so they had a happy ending at least. While this was happening in the background, Facebook was doing great. It quickly expanded from Harvard to other Ivy League colleges, and after Eduardo left, big investors like Peter Thiel and Reid Hoffman were interested in it. Just months after its launch, it raised $12.7 million, and it was growing fast. But it would get its biggest boost in 2006, when Facebook was made available to the general public. It reached 50 million users in 2007, from 12 million in 2006. Ironically, Facebook became popular because it allowed users greater privacy than competitors like MySpace. Facebook emphasized user privacy and gave users more control over who could see their information. In contrast, MySpace had a more open approach to sharing information, which made some users uncomfortable with the exposure level. During this time, Mark Zuckerberg also had an overall positive reputation. A genius and geeky programmer who built a great website. If you look at some of his interviews in the early days, it's so natural and refreshing, unlike today, where he hardly displays any emotion. Facebook was becoming huge, By 2007, Mark Zuckerberg officially became the youngest billionaire at age 23, and he was the new golden boy of Silicon Valley. However, his reputation would take a hit after the movie The Social Network was released on October 1, 2010. It was the first time Zuckerberg was portrayed as a ruthless businessman who betrayed everyone. By this time, Facebook too had changed. It no longer cared about privacy. Most of the information was public by default, and Facebook started collecting data and targeting specific ads. While this was great for business, people didn't like it very much. Its privacy policy went from no personal information that you submit to the Facebook will be available to any user in 2005 to the default privacy setting for certain types of information you post on Facebook is set to everyone in 2010. Mark Zuckerberg took Facebook public in 2012, and this was when his reputation started to decline further. Facebook was already using targeted ads, proving to be much more effective than traditional advertising. But this wasn't enough, and Facebook needed more accuracy in their advertising. To target ads more accurately, Facebook needed a lot more data on users' behavior. It began to collect data aggressively and profile people based on it. Over the years, this algorithm got so good that it could accurately profile you better than your parents or best friends. Facebook intentionally made its algorithm so addictive that people always felt the urge to check what their friends are doing, scrolling through posts aimlessly, and get excited about notifications. The more time a person spends on Facebook, the more accurate their profile became. Privacy was no longer a concern when ignoring it meant making billions. It doesn't end there. Facebook ended the privacy aspect of WhatsApp and Instagram after their acquisition. WhatsApp was founded on the idea of privacy and choice. Its founders wanted to avoid becoming like Facebook, and for the first few years, funded it with an optional subscription of $1. When Facebook took over WhatsApp, it completely changed. Zuckerberg first promised that WhatsApp would be independent and he would not interfere in the operations. But as soon as he took over, he started implementing drastic changes like integrating WhatsApp data with Facebook to create a more comprehensive profile of users and pressuring founders to monetize in Facebook's way. Brian Acton, one of the founders, left after being frustrated with Zuckerberg and started Signal. Instagram was a similar story. Mark Zuckerberg promised independence, but ended up making Instagram identical to Facebook. But the most significant blow to Mark Zuckerberg's reputation came in 2017, when a whistleblower named Christopher Wiley gave an interview with the New York Times and The Guardian. He blew the whistle on Cambridge Analytica, a company that helped Donald Trump in the 2016 election. The company developed a personality quiz that people could take, and hundreds of thousands of people signed up for it. What they didn't know was Cambridge Analytica was collecting data not just from the participants, but also their friends. This data included profiles, recent social media engagements, likes and comments, and much more. It was then used to predict which voters would swing towards Donald Trump if they were fed bad news about Hillary Clinton. Thanks to the seemingly harmless quiz, Cambridge Analytica collected data on 87 million Americans. Facebook wasn't directly involved in this, but it allowed a small company to manipulate the US elections. By this time, Mark Zuckerberg had become unrecognizable. He sounded robotic and cold, and people could not relate to him. In the congressional hearing after this scandal, it felt like he didn't care about anything except profits, and his reputation hit an all-time low. It has only gotten worse from there. Whistleblowers have come out accusing Facebook of everything, from promoting hateful and polarizing content to being aware of the harmful effects of Instagram on teenage girls. So, when Mark Zuckerberg announced his plans for the metaverse, everyone wanted him to fail. The whole idea of the metaverse and Web 3.0 is not letting corporations control everything. Investors are not buying into this idea too, with Meta's share price crashing more than 70% at its lowest. So, what do you think about Mark Zuckerberg? Do you think he deserves all the hate? Comment that down below. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this.